How did you feel about editing the book?
Immensely honored that this team of people that worked for Madiba over the years shared their stories so freely, so willingly. It's a huge honor to be able to bring their stories to everybody.
The experience of reading about Madiba while you were editing must have brought you closer to this iconic statesman. Can you tell us briefly about that?
Well, I think what stood out for me was the human side of him, in that he dealt with everybody in a very equal, normal, human and funny way. He had a great sense of humor. A lot of the stories are very, very funny. And I think it's important that the rest of the world sees this side of him.
Yes. He was also a loving person. Most of the stories, they really depict that for me. Can you tell us about what you also picked up from the character of this iconic man?
I think Madiba made time for everybody. He treated everyone with respect. He knew people by their name, especially people that worked for him. And just in the manner that he dealt with people, his love shone through.
I knew that he loved kids, but when I read the book, you could see from time to time he will break protocol just to be with the kids. What else stood out for you in the book when you read some of the stories?
Well, I think what was quite amusing was how he used to go to bookshops and other shops to buy books when clearly all he wanted to do was be amongst ordinary people. And one of the funny stories is how he went to a bookshop, spent a lot of time there, was mobbed, and at the end of it he wanted to pay, and he pulled out US dollars from his wallet and asked, "Do you take dollars?" Obviously they didn't, and then the poor bodyguard had to pay.
And I think he said he didn't pay him back. And what are some of the things that surprised you from the book?
How people were so generous with their experiences, and I have to say a lot of them, the stories we had heard before, it's stories we had shared amongst staff. So we knew some of them were a little new to us. We were also a little bit surprised by some stories. Like the chocolates melting. I hadn't heard that one before. The chocolates that he had wanted to give to Mrs Machel. So we've discovered lots of very interesting little bits of information, and we hear new stories all the time.
Do you have a special moment that you can share with us?
Well, you know, my stories, I don't have any big stories from the time I worked here, but I spent time with him when I was a journalist. And those stories really come from there. I think one of my favorite stories was I spent Christmas Day with him in 1995 with a small group of people, and we walked for about 5 hours together. But the story is, when I went back to Cape Town, I met a woman who said, "Oh, are you Sam Venter?" And I said, "Why?" And she said, "Madiba called me up to the podium when he was meeting a foreign dignitary and introduced me to everyone as you." So after spending all that time with him, he introduced someone else as me.
I also found myself laughing a lot while I was reading this book. There is a very funny story where Madiba sent his protection leader to find the running shoes. Apparently his grandson lost the running shoes, and he said, "Please go back to the school and look for these running shoes," which was very funny for me. Can you also share anything that you found funny while you were reading this book?
I think the story about Madiba's lunch being killed, about the chicken that was run over by his protection detail, was very, very funny. And but you know, they made the huge effort to go and find him a chicken so that the poor gentleman at the house could prepare his lunch. So there are lots of stories like that are just so endearing.
Yeah. Why is this book important, not only for South Africans, but for the international community?
I think, as Mrs Machel said in her foreword, it's very important for people to see him as a human being. And the world saw him as an icon, as a president, a politician, a peacemaker. but they weren't up close and personal with him as these people were. So it's a side of Madiba that not very many people will know about.
I know he was a brave man, because there is a story where he went to Stellenbosch and addressed the white farmers who were not so happy about him showing up, but we are told that in the end they were clapping, happy about what he had said to them. How powerful is this man? What else can you say stood out for you?
I think, you know, for Madiba, basically, no matter who you were, once you met him, you can't help but become drawn in by him, by the way he speaks to you, he sees you, he addresses you. You can't help but communicate with him, and Madiba always kept lines of communication open, whether you were friend or foe.
Yeah.
He embraced everyone.
I saw in the book there is a quote where when he was addressing his staff here at the Nelson Mandela Foundation during his 90th birthday, he said, "Nothing is more important than to be loved by your colleagues." What does this statement say to you?
I think that's a part of the way Madiba used to make people feel important. Because he always used to say things like, the most important thing in the world is this. The most important thing in the world is that. The most important people are this.
Yeah.
Because he just makes, as Vim was saying, he makes you feel important and respected and loved all the time. And when you were in the room with him, it didn't matter whether you were a president or a dignitary, you were just a human being.
And over the years, we know that some people are critical of Madiba. Do you think that maybe his critics will will better understand him after reading this book?
I'd hope that they would see the human side of Madiba. Madiba never claimed to be perfect. He always said everybody's capable of making mistakes, but people are not defined by that one momentary lapse in judgment. So I hope that they would see the human side of Madiba, and that they would enjoy reading through these stories shared by his staff.
Thank you.